I just started recording, so start whenever you want to now.
Okay, so good afternoon, guys. Welcome to our NMIMUN session 1, the final day. So for our June 14th class, we're going to do a lecture on position papers. Then we're going to have a team activity on position paper. Then a lecture on opening speech. Then another team activity based on our lecture for opening speech. And finally, I'll give you guys homework. Um, Reminding of homework. Last class I was supposed to give you guys homework, but then I forgot. So I'll explain to you guys the homework I was supposed to give you guys last class. It's not necessarily homework, I should say. It's more of like a guideline that you can follow and answer questions if you're willing to. And we highly suggest you do this before you decide to do your position paper, which we're going to talk about today. So in order to access the homework, go to classwork, then go down. The second to last, it'll say country research and the position paper. So click on that and you see a PDF saying MUN education / position paper research. Click on the PDF. And this is the worksheet that you are going to do. Ignore the position paper part and this position paper evaluation rubric, these set of questions, and ignore all the way until page 9. This is about all position papers, which we're going to address later today, but then as of now, the homework I was supposed to give you guys yesterday was about country research. If you guys answer all of these questions, to answer all of these questions, you guys are going to have to do research, and that's how this worksheet will be able to guide you through your MUN research. It's not going to be that hard. Of course, we won't grade it, so you can put it in bullet points, note form, or you can maybe just answer this question in one word, like these set of questions in one word. It's up to you. Choose the way that's more convenient for you. And if you do so, then it's going to be a quick research. It's going to be less work than you imagine, and it's a total of 10 pages of worksheet that you have to fill in. So only after you finish this worksheet, we advise you guys to work on your position paper, okay? So first start on this worksheet. I was supposed to give you this worksheet for you guys to start your research right after you got your country and your background guide, which Alan posted on Google Classroom. So with that topic and our given committee and your given country, please start filling this in. Yep, and let's continue. This is our outline for today. So first starting with position paper. Many of you might know, people who are in Saipan International School MUN know the importance of position papers, and people who were who were there for yesterday's lecture also know the importance of position paper because I emphasized it a lot. So people who are not yet familiar with position paper or are new to the concept of position paper might think, what in the world position paper are? So position paper is what defines a nation's stance with respect to a certain topic. So it's a topic, it's an essay. It's a one-page essay where you store all of your country research. And in this country research essay, in this country research essay, you try to say what your nation's stance is relating to the topic or respect to the certain topic. I'll go more in detail for how to write a position paper later on. But first, starting with the purpose of position papers. The purpose of position paper is that it gives the first impression of you to the chairs. So in majority of cases, you will not know who your committee chair are. There are more than two. There are usually 2 to 3 chairs. And these chairs won't know who each delegate is, either personally or at all. So it tells you how much research you did, and it also tells you what kind of country you're representing. So for example, if both Alan and I become delegates for a UNICEF Committee on Child Labor, representing the United States. How Alan will depict United States and stand as a delegate of the United States, and how I will represent the delegate of the United States will be different, even though we will have the same beliefs and this almost the same solution. So by drafting the country research essay, also known as the position paper, it'll show the chairs what kind of country delegate you are planning on representing. And the second purpose is that it can become a stepping stone for your award. Um, as I've mentioned in yesterday's lecture, the first set of assignment that you can earn points for getting an award in MUN conferences is position paper. And position paper, some conferences weight a lot with a lot of points. Some conferences just weigh it as a normal assignment and give you normal amount of points, but still it's the first set of assignment that they'll grade you for. So doing well in this position paper and turning in a position paper that is 100% 100 almost perfect and almost receiving 100% of the points will give you a step ahead of other competing delegates. Now I'll talk about the format of the position paper. As I said before, position paper are fairly similar to essays that you've written in your English class. You'll write your name, you'll write your teacher's name, you'll write your class name and the date. This is similar to how MUN heading format is structured. You have to first write your committee, then your agenda, your representing country, and then lastly your delegate name. An example, taking an example that I put at the side, this is our committee that we are doing for the series committee. Our committee is UNICEF, but please don't put UNICEF or the acronym. Please put the full and official name of the UN committee. So you would say the United Nations Children's Fund, and maybe at the side you can put parentheses UNICEF. And our agenda is measures of ensuring safety in educational facilities for children worldwide. So that's basically the topic that we're debating about. That's called agenda in MUN. The country I am representing is Germany, and of course, my delegate name is Eileen No. So that's the heading of your position paper, and it's gonna go at the left top. Now I'll talk about body format. So this is body paragraphs, and the purpose for each body paragraph, or the name of each body paragraph. The first body paragraph is topic background. And the second one is past international actions. Third is country policy. And fourth is possible solutions. The second one and third one, past international actions and country policy, may change according to different MUN conference style. But for SIS MUN and also for NMIMUN, which is hosted by SIS MUN, we will follow this format because we prefer this format. So that will be the order that we're going to require you guys to format your position paper in. And for all universal MUN conferences, topic background and possible solutions are always the first and last paragraphs respectively. And these 4 points are what you guys have to always remember when writing a position paper. The font always has to be Times New Roman. The font size should always be 11 points. The space should always be single spaced and a margin of 1 inch. Now I'll go into detail for each paragraph and how you're supposed to draft each paragraph and what the chair will expect from each of these paragraphs. First, starting with topic background. What you see at the left in this blue colored font is basically a copy and paste of the rubric for this specific paragraph. In a position paper rubric, there is a rubric for each specific paragraph because they all serve different purposes. And this is a component of the rubric for the topic background paragraph. The chair looks at whether the topic is clearly defined and whether it includes who, what, when, and where. The chair also looks at whether relevant statistics and facts are included. And the chair always looks for root causes to the topics, whether they're explained or not, and whether they're addressed in your topic background paragraph. And the chairs also look at sub-issues to the main topic that need to be addressed and whether they are included in your paragraph too. And at the side are a set of questions that you can use to guide your writing. So what I usually do is I align this set of questions, and what I do is I don't care about drafting an essay whatsoever at that moment. What I do is I gain the knowledge through country research, and then I try to answer these questions in professional and formal language in 1 or 2 sentences. And after I've answered these 4 questions, what I do is I take off the questions. So I delete the questions, and then it becomes somewhat of a paragraph. Because I've been answering 4 different questions, it might not flow as well. So between the answer for this question and the answer for the second set of questions, I'll put maybe a transition at the beginning of the sentence or the end of the sentence to make it flow more smoothly. And then if you just do that, then your topic background paragraph is set. This is an easy way to create a well-structured position paper paragraph in a easy way. That's the method that I prefer and recommend to you guys. So the set of questions you have to ask for your topic background is, what is the definition of the topic? Where does the topic take place? Who is involved? How many people does it affect? Where? In what ways? And finally, why is this topic important?
와,
자고 있었어?
아니?
A lot of sources. So I tried to compile the best sources and find the easiest way, present the easiest way for you guys to write a position paper and get a high points on compared to other delegates. So please reference back to this presentation even after it's finished while you guys are writing your own position paper. Okay, the one in the blue is the rubric. This is the rubric that the chair will grade you on for this specific paragraph. So the chair will see whether the topic is clearly defined and whether it includes who, what, when, or where. The chair will see whether there are relevant statistics and facts and whether they're included and integrated nicely into your topic background paragraph. And you are also supposed to find the root causes to the topic and explain why they're the root cause. And you also have to include sub-issues to the main topic that need to be addressed and that needs to be framed. So this is the criteria for a good topic background and a thorough topic background. But instead of writing a topic background by looking at this criteria and the grading rubric, I tried to, and with different sources, I aligned different questions that you can answer. So what you need to do is you have all these questions, right? When you have all these questions, what you have to do is just answer this question in full sentences with 1 or 2 sentences, and then take out the question. Of course, because they're different set of questions, it's not going to flow as well. If you put some transitions into the different sentences, then you will have a good topic background. So that's usually how I write my position papers. I first start by answering these questions, and then with that information and wording, I try to create a good and a professional topic background paragraph. And some notes to keep in mind while you're doing your topic background is that it should address the general topic, and it should not be specific to any country, including yours, in any way. So that means that even if Alan writes a topic background on UNICEF child labor, and if I write a topic background on UNICEF child labor, even though maybe he's the United Kingdom and I'm Nigeria, I can still use his topic background paragraph and be able to use it for mine. So it should be general. It should not be specific to any country, because you guys are all debating about the same topic. And it's a chance for you to define key terms or describe the subject in a general sense. And it's a chance to highlight the significance of your committee topic in this paragraph and address relevant topics. So these are some notes to keep in mind for this topic background. And now we're going to past international action paragraph. This is the second paragraph, and it sees whether you can explain key UN resolutions, treaties, or convention on this topic. This is really important because by doing so, you'll be able to prove to the chairs that I am aware of what my committee did beforehand on this topic and what resolutions they passed and what was ineffective or what was not, and why this is an important resolution. So in past international action paragraph, please include UN resolutions or treaties or conventions that will determine your committee decisions. And they'll also see whether UN programs and funds are mentioned for their implementation efforts. Also, UN reports or other official reports are mentioned for progress on actions are also good. And they also see whether other international actors like regional groups or NGOs are mentioned. The rest of the three, some position papers or majority of position papers don't have NGOs. So you guys can kind of cross the last bullet point out. But then if you have international actors or NGOs, please mention them if they're significant. And the rest of the two, number 2 and number 3, UN programs and UN reports, you guys can include them if there is, and if there's no, then you guys don't need to. But the key point is UN resolutions. So make sure to bring in UN resolutions, treaty, or convention. And the questions to guide you for this paragraph is, have there been any interesting statements by the UN officials on this topic? And through yesterday's lecture, you guys should have remembered that Secretary General is one of the most important individuals in the UN. So what the Secretary General says on a certain topic is really influential, and if you can bring that in, so if the Secretary General said something about child labor, bringing that in your position paper, it will be a great advantage. And another question you can ask is, what are the most important laws and agreements on this topic? So basically resolutions. And the mistake that most delegates make is that they create a past international action paragraph and they include resolutions, but then they just drop in the resolutions. They don't build on what the resolution is. They don't give any background. They just say, this is the resolution, this is the second resolution, and there's some other resolution, blah, 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 blah. What you have to do is, in order to get full points for explaining key UN resolution, is that you have to say what the resolution addresses and whether the resolution was effective or not, and why it's an important resolution for you to mention in your position paper. So you have to develop the UN resolution, not just drop it in your position paper. And the third question you have to ask is, do any major non-government organizations work on this topic? And again, if there's no NGOs, don't pressure yourself to answer this question and just rely on the rest of the two and try to build your UN resolutions that you include as much as possible. Some international action paragraph notes that you can take into consideration is approach the issue in more of a global scale while still looking at it from your country's perspective. And it's a chance for you to allude to the chair that you're also knowledgeable on previous actions and decisions your committee decided beforehand. So what I mean by approach it in more of a global scale while looking at it in your country's perspective is that it should still be global, and your past international action notes should still be fairly similar to other countries. But then from the second paragraph, you can start hinting your country. So maybe you'll bring in resolutions that your country decided was effective, or maybe you'll bring in resolutions that to your country it wasn't as effective, and state that this resolution does not address this kind of problems. So it's okay to look at past international action paragraph in more of your country's perspective, but then try to put only a little bit of your country's perspective in there, and then try to just bring in unanimously important resolutions for all countries in your committee. Okay. Our third paragraph is the country policy paragraph. And this is the second most important paragraph. The most important paragraph is the last one. But then the chairs will look at how you, the chairs will look at whether you explain how the topic has impacted your country or how it is impacting your country and how it can be relevant. The chair will also look at whether you explain the country policy clearly and what your country wants to do about this topic. The chair will also look at whether it includes supporting sources like UN resolutions, voting records, speeches, articles, etc. And the chair will also look at whether it explains actions country has taken internationally or domestically. So this is where you can highlight your country research that you've done. And by answering all of the questions that I gave you through the worksheet, you guys should be able to answer these questions really easily. And the question is, how has this impacted your country? So by this, they mean like the topic. If it's child labor, like I bring in for my examples, how has child labor affected the United States? How has child labor affected your country? And if you're Germany, then how has it impacted Germany? And what has your representative tried to do about this topic? By representative, they mean your president, your country's president, your country's legislators, or any important head of state or secretary of state or anyone that is considered relevant and important representatives regarding this topic. So what did those representatives do in the past? And with those actions, what can you conclude? Is your country for this topic or are they opposing this topic? And the third question you can ask is, what types of policies would your representatives want the country to adopt on this topic? So this is similar to the next paragraph we're gonna do, but then the one difference is that by answering this question, what types of policy would your representative want your country to adopt in this topic? You are basically saying, and you're basically declaring a side. You're basically declaring to the chair that you are either in this side or in that side. So when you decide what types of policy your country is going to implement, you have to make sure to accurately reflect your country's research. So there are a lot of countries who are in the middle. So there are a lot of countries who do not want to lean on one side or on the other side. So if you're that kind of country, then answer this question carefully and maybe say like, it would be nice if to prevent peace we would take this action. However, also consider this choice. So try to remain objective as possible. But if your country is really swayed to one side, then create radical policies and state those radical policies in your position paper. So country policy is only on your country and highlighting your country. And some notes about your country policy paragraph is that it's a chance for you to organize your country research you've done for weeks into a short paragraph. A quick way for the chairs to check whether you did your research thoroughly and correctly. And provide examples specific and unique to your country. So the only way for the chairs to know whether you actually did your country or not is for you to bring specific and unique examples. So if you only bring in the examples or the detailed or the examples that are available in the background guide, then the chairs will think that, okay, you just got your information from the background guide, you didn't do any of your specific research, so you don't really know about your country. That's what they're going to conclude. So in this paragraph, try to bring in something that's truly special to your country that your country did to solve this kind of problem. Okay. And the last paragraph, which is the most important paragraph, is the possible solutions paragraph. Just remember, this always has to be in your country's perspective. The chair will see whether it addresses different sub-issues to the topic. So when you're looking at child labor isn't going to be the only problem you're trying to solve. Through child labor, you're going to have increase in children's stress. You're going to have an increase in unemployment because children are technically considered unemployed. So there are a branch of other sub-issues and sub-conflicts that come up from this one main committee, that one topic that you're trying to address in your committee. So address those sub-issues because it shows that you can look thoroughly into the topic and not just look at the superficial problem of the committee. And the chair will see if you can explain the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed solution. So your goal is to propose a solution, determine its strength, and also determine its weakness. What people usually do is that they only put the strength of the solution that they created, which makes them lose points for this criteria. And third, the chairs will see if you can frame major thematic or political or regional group tensions. This is rare for you to find any information on this, so they're trying to see if there are any like regional conflicts that can happen through this conflict, but then it's not something that you guys have to always consider when writing this possible solution. So many of you guys might know Israeli and Palestinian issues. So when they say maybe enact a one-state resolution, um, that will you will need to bring in information that will play a part in Israeli culture and Palestinian culture. But then, except those really black and white resolution situations, you guys don't really have to address this third bullet point. For the first bullet point is what the chairs will see whether solutions are consistent with the country policy. So in your last paragraph, you're going to propose a solution, but then that solution has to be reasonable with your third paragraph, which is your country policy. So if your country is for and extremely radical, then your proposed solution should also be for and extremely radical. Okay. And the questions you can consider are, what specific plans would your representative like the country to undertake to address this issue? What specific plans would your representative like the other representative in the cabinet to undertake? And why would your idea work? How is it realistic and effective? Give specific plans. So the main essential part of the possible solutions paragraph is that you're making it realistic. The only way you can make it realistic is you provide details. So try to provide as much detail as you can in the short paragraph, and then try to make it an appealing, realistic solution in your country's perspective. That's your goal for this paragraph. There are some notes you can take for this possible solution paragraph. It's the most valuable paragraph of your position paper, and you can structure it similar to resolutions passed before that were effective, or you can draft a completely new one. So that's basically saying you can borrow an idea from a resolution passed beforehand on the same topic that your committee passed, or you can try to create a new and creative idea, and you won't lose points for either one. Either, well, it's just a matter of fact whether you can bring in details and examples to make it realistic. And this should always be your country's perspective, as I said before. It should not be a unanimous solution. It should be something that your country wishes to enact, because by enacting this resolution, your country will be the most, your country will have the most advantage. And these are just important notes you should have in general for the overall position paper. Do not use personal pronouns. Even people who did NMIMUN for a long time have a problem with this. Even I do. When you are referring to yourself in your position paper, or also to yourself in UN conferences, the moment the UN conference starts, do not say I. So if I'm China, or I'll say if I'm the United States, and I'll say the delegate of the United States would like to say that blah 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 blah. Or I can say she. So I'll say she believes that blah 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 blah. So you will never be able to refer to yourself as I, because you are a delegate representing a country. So either put your formal country official's name, the delegate of the People's Republic of China, or the delegate of the United States, or etc. So you have to know your country's full name, country's official name, and make sure to always refer to yourself like that. If you say I in a conference, the chair will call you out publicly and say, please do not use personal pronouns. I go through that a lot. It's really embarrassing. So please don't make that mistake for yourself. and do not include irrelevant information. So as I've said before, you're going to do a 9-page research following that worksheet. In that 9-page, you're only gonna have a single paper to put all of your country research and show off all the effort that you've done. So in this single page, you want to avoid having irrelevant information, and X out all the unnecessary information and try to put only the most relevant and the most necessary information that you can to show that you know your country, to show that you know in depth about the topic you're debating about. So position paper is not something so long and so tedious and something you have to work long hours for. It's just that the research is hard. The key fact about getting a good point on, or getting a high point on position paper, is that you you word it correctly, you word it professionally, and then you only include the information you need to prove that you did your research and you know your topic. And always cite your sources. So I remember Tiana asking me about citing, and I said only put the URL. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You're supposed to put the URL and the date next to it. So you put the URL, and by date, I don't mean the date you've accessed the information, but the date that information was uploaded, or that website was uploaded. So URL and date, and use only credible websites. Because at the end, when you send your position paper off to the chair, you guys will always have to include a works cited page at the end, and the chair will look at those. The chair will look at the websites and the sources you've used and determine whether they're credible or not. Okay, and never talk negatively about your country. So even in the country policy, it's always a chance for you to talk good about your country, not negatively. Even though you personally don't agree with your country's stance, you can never talk negative about your country. And that relates to the last bullet point, which means do not include personal opinions. No personal pronouns and no personal opinions in your country, in your position paper. Okay. We're gonna have our cue number 4, which is give 2 reasons why position papers are essential part of MUN conferences. And please send the answer to Mr. Witt. Okay, Alan, do you have everyone's?
Not everyone's yet. They're still coming in. Give them a little more time.
Guys, we're almost there. Can do it. After this, around like 10 minutes more lecture, and you guys will go into Teams.
May I be excused for a second?
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think we've got everything we need. Everyone we need.
Okay, did everyone answer?
No,
Okay.
thinking they're coming in. Let me know in the private message if you're still answering it.
Okay, and if the pace was a little bit fast for you guys, just please let me know on that, and I'll slower my pace. Let's wait for. Should we wait for Sam, or should we just continue?
I think you just continue.
Okay. We only have a little bit left, so let's push through. Okay. We have another IQ. IQ number 5. Name all 4 different types of body paragraphs in a position paper that we're supposed to have. It should be in order, and when you send the answers to Alan, please put it in one text so that he doesn't have everyone just mixing and confusion going
Oh,
on.
by the way, there's 2 Mr. Witt. Don't send it to Mr. Witt. Send it to Whitney Altizer.
You guys are lucky because Alan is really lenient when it comes to points. So for those of you who are not really sure, just give it a try and you guys might be able to earn points. Sam, you have extra time, so don't rush. It's okay.
think we got everyone's.
Okay. I'll stop share for now because okay. Now please go to your Google Classroom. Okay, I'll share. Okay. If you guys can see here, please go to here. Position paper rubric. If you click on it, you're gonna see something like this. Just keep this open. And I don't know. Can you guys keep this open while seeing my screen shared? Yeah? Not? No? Are you guys confused? So what you have to do is open this separately from your own tab, and then also see my screen that says this. Put a thumbs up if you guys did it. Okay, we still need some people. Okay, I think majority of you guys got it. Okay, so I'm going to read over this. This is an example position paper. This is not necessarily a good one, but not a really bad one. So what we're gonna do is I'll read over this, and what you guys have to do is when we just briefly read over it, don't care about anything else in the rubric except for the top 4 points, which is 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. And 1.1 looks at whether the paper contains a header and 4 sections. 1.2 is grammar and punctuation. 1.3 is tone, whether the tone sounds professional and diplomatic. And 1.4 is works cited, but then we don't care about works cited in this example. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the rubric side by side and dissect this position paper and show you guys what part of the position paper is lacking, what part of the position paper what part of the position paper they hit in the rubric and they got full points for, so that you guys are going to do the same thing with your partner, but for 3 different position papers, and you guys are going to rank it from the first and the second and the third. The position paper with the most points, if you look at the bottom of your rubric, let me move this here. If you look here at the bottom, it says total position paper score. The one with the highest score is going to be the best position paper. And you guys are going to get into groups and decide which is the best. But first, I'll do one example, and you guys can get into groups and get started right away. So, committee, United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. Topic, forced and bonded child labor. Country, Thailand. School, Saipan International School. Child labor is defined as work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, and their dignity, and that is harmful for physical and mental development. Child labor is present in almost every country and continent, and is even more prominent in countries with low per capita income. It is estimated that 218 million children are engaged in some form of labor. 8% of all children aged 5 to 14 in Thailand are affected by child labor. Children are integrated into some form of harshest work condition. It is reported that 58.6% of child laborers aged between 5 and 17 working agricultural sector. They are robbed with their undisputed rights of restricted choice of labor. They're abused sexually and physically to a degree that may cause emotional distress, and they're robbed of their right to a free and adequate education. The 2017 UN conference in Buenos Aires has yielded a promising attack and aimed at eradicating forced labor. The 4th Annual Global Conference on Sustained Eradication of Child Labor has devised Buenos Aires Declaration. Was this declaration laid plans to eliminate child labor by 2025 and forced labor by 2030. A resolution 71-177 was adopted on the 16th of December 2016 as a treaty enforced by the UN. This document contained revised concerns and ideas on the issue of child rights and children labor and urges all participating members to attend a General Assembly. In addition to these resolutions, in addition to Resolution 68-147 was adopted on the UN General Assembly to ensure that effective measures are taken to prohibit and eliminate the worst forms of child labor and child labor itself. The rapid industrialization of Thailand within the last century has created a shortage of laborers, thus creating a niche for child labor. Millions of children make up a part of all these subdivisions of the workforce. The country of Thailand has realized the inhumane environments investigated by child labor and is determined to enforce our already adamant anti-child labor laws. Thailand has increased funding towards certain labor laws enforced and have also created agencies and organizations to enforce our laws. The Department of Special Investigations, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Division under the Criminal Court of Justice, and the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare on the Ministry of Labor are a few examples of these organizations funded by Thailand's government. Continued cooperation between the UN General Assembly and UNICEF with our government would be ideal to continue funding and discussions aimed to prohibit all forms of child labor. Thailand also encourages the continued use of MICS protocols to provide our organizations associated with labor protection with valuable information. Thailand believes that the most urgent topics to be addressed are those of abolishment of child labor in Thailand's seafood industry and the sexual exploitation industry. Thailand insists that other member states begin to plan their strategies on prohibiting the worst forms of child labor, as these are the most immediate threats to the well-being of children. Thailand feels that providing additional funding to labor protection/environment agencies and publicizing the repercussions associated with labor trafficking are the most effective steps in the path to prohibiting child labor. These plans are deemed effective by Thailand as they increase the reach of Thailand's government's statutes. So this is the overall position paper. And as I said, only look at the 4 points. And this is the annotation. So as you can see for 1.1, I highlighted red. It says 1.1 paper contains header and 4 sections, which they do, so they get total 3 points for that, full points. And grammar and punctuation is correctly used. So let's see about that. 1.1 is addressed here. As you can see, this is not capitalized. Also this is British English or British language. So he is not consistent with child labor and labor. In here he uses labor, and in here he uses a different form of labor. And you have spelling errors here. Also spelling error here and spelling error here. So if they hit a point or if they did correctly, then what I did was I highlighted it red. If not, I created a comment and said 1.2, and that means take off points from 1.2. So they received around 2 points because the overall grammar was good and the punctuation was correct, but for these points, overall points, the student was not careful or did not proofread, so he got a 2. And at the end, I put a comment that said the overall tone was professional, and he would receive a 3 for that. And works cited we're not going to include. And after you looked at the first format and language rubric section, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the first paragraph only. Don't care about the other paragraphs, and then start reading from here and see if it hits 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. So it hits 2.1 over here. It determines what it is. So what we're debating about is child labor. That is addressed, and he doesn't just say we're going to be talking about child labor. What he does is he also defines it. So he did give full points for what and for who, for when and where. he addressed it here. It's present as of now, so when is now, and almost every country and continent. So he says that it's not restricted to only one country, but it's relevant for all countries. So he earned points for when and where. And he also earns point for who by saying child labor is aged between 5 and 7 as the people who are the victims. So for 2.1 in the rubric section, he earns 3 points. 3 points, yes. And he did bring in relevant statistics and facts over here. I highlighted it gray, and 2.2 of the section. And over here, 5.6% also goes into 2.2 of the rubric section. So he earns 3 points for bringing in relevant statistics and facts. And the root causes are not mentioned here. So at the end, if they're not mentioned, I would put a tab at the end and say misstating the root cause to the topic and explanation to it. So he would earn 1 point out of the 3 points available for him for 2.3. And finally, 2.4, sub-issues to the main topic that needs to be addressed are framed. He does this in the last sentence. He says, they're abused sexually and physically to a degree that may cause emotional distress and robbed of their rights to free and adequate education. So he addresses not only child labor, but the sexual and physical abuse that comes with it. And the second sub-issue that he addresses is emotional distress. And the third sub-issue that he addresses is right to a free education that are all caused because of child labor. So for 2.4, he earns a 3. Then going into the second paragraph, for 3.1, he needs to explain key UN resolution, treaty, or convention on this topic. As you can see, the two standing out resolutions are Resolution 71-177, and he earns the point for 3.1 for this. And he also brings in Resolution 68-147. But then for this first resolution he brings in, he did do a good job developing this resolution. But then for the second resolution he brings in, he just drops it in. So he gets 2 points for 3.1 because one, he did good establishing. For the second one, he just dropped it in and said that's just one of the resolutions that UNICEF passed, which is not not enough and not sufficient evidence and information on the resolution. So for 3.1, he receives a 2. For 3.2, UN programs and funds that are not mentioned. So I said at the end of the paragraph, 3.2 or no programs 3.2 or UN reports 3.3 or NGOs 3.4 were mentioned. He only brings in a convention, UN conference. He brings in a resolution, but that's about it. So he would receive 1 point, 1 point for 3.2, 1 point for 3.3, and 1 point for 3.4. But if he is able to justify that there are no NGOs or there are no UN reports or programs significant enough to bring in for this position paper, he would not lose any points for it and it would just not be counted at all. But he did not, and he only brought in information to hit 3.1. So for past interactions, he only earns a total of 2 points. For country policy, I left this blank to do it with you guys. So how I usually look at the criteria of a position paper is I start one by one. So I read 4.1, which is explains how the topic has impacted the country or how it is can be relevant. So you're finding how it's impacting your country, and let's read over it. The rapid industrialization of Thailand within the last century has created a shortage of laborers, thus creating a niche for child labor. Let's first underline this. Millions of children make up a part of the subdivisions of workforce. So basically in Thailand, in case you guys are confused. So he is major part. He creates a relevance and how his country is affected by the topic. And The country of Thailand realizes the inhumane environments instigated by the child labor and is determined to enforce our already adamant anti-child labor laws. Thailand has increased funding towards certain labor laws law enforcement and also created agencies and organizations to enforce our laws. The Department of Special Investigations, or the Anti-Trafficking In-Person Divisions under the Criminal Court of Justice, and the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare of the Ministry of Labor are a few examples of these organizations funded by Thailand's government. Continued cooperation between the UN General Assembly and UNICEF with our government would be ideal to continue the funding and discussions aimed to prohibit all forms of child labor. Thailand also encourages the continued use of NMICS protocols to provide our organization associated with labors protected with valuable information. So this is the only 2 times he brings in how his country is affected by child labor. Then looking at 4.2, explains the country policy clearly. So by explaining his country policy clearly, that means whether or not he is able to clearly state his side. He was able to clearly state his side by saying that the Thailand government encourages continued use and strengthening of anti-child labor laws. So he earns 3 points for that. And what you have to do is just underline any portion or evidence that proves so. And for 4.3, include supporting sources such as UN resolutions adopted, events attended, voting records, speech made, etc. He didn't do any of the following, but then there's etc. And that means any evidence that can prove that the government is leaning to one side or not. By doing so, he brings in anti-trafficking divisions, blah, 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 this whole set of programs or organizations that the government funds. So this is enough evidence to show that the government is against anti-child labor laws. It's against child labor. So for 4.3, he receives a 3. And for 4.4, explains actions country has taken internationally or domestically. That is also overlapping with 4.3 and then the part we highlighted. So for country policy, this person did a really good job and earns full points. And the only thing maybe if we can work on is the grammatical errors in here and explaining what MICS is. So when you're writing your position paper, you will probably use words that are not universally recognized. Please try to define those key terms so that your chairs will also understand what they are, okay? But then overall, he did a really great job. Okay, now going into our last paragraph. It's pretty thin as compared to the paragraph above, but then this paragraph has to be the most thorough and the most detailed. So let's look at it. I gave him, for this part, I gave him points for 5.1, but then I only gave him 1 point, so he receives a 2 out of 3 because 5.1 is addresses different sub-issues to the topic. So on the top, he did address sexually and physically abused as part 1. Part 2 is emotional distress. Part 3 is education. But then in his solution, he only addresses sexually abused. So he only addresses 1 out of the 3 sub-issues that he introduced to us in the introduction. If he was able to bring in a solution to emotional distress and adequate education in his solution paragraph, then he would have earned full points for 5.1, but he didn't. So he gets a 2 out of 3. And for 5.2, explains the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed solution. So he uses words like the most effective steps. These plans are deemed effective, which shows that he explains the strength, but there's no part of the resolution where he explains the weakness, as I've said before. This is the problem that most delegates have. You guys have to realize that your resolution, there are limitations to it, and you addressing the limitation shows the chair that you understand the in-depth of the resolution you're proposing, and it looks like you know more about your resolution than anyone else. So it's important to strengthen it, but it's also important to address some limitations because no solution is perfect. So he only earned 1 point, so 2 out of 3 in 5.2. And 5.3, as I've said before, he did not. It's not really necessary, so he didn't really get points off for it. But then he didn't really mention that it's not necessary, so he gets a 1 out of 3. So there was no 5.3 here. And 5.4 is fulfilled, which is solutions are consistent with country policy. The solution represented here or stated here in his last paragraph is aligned with his anti-child labor beliefs. So he gets 3 points for 5.4. Okay, that's done with me talking, and now you guys can, wait, let me stop share. Do you guys have any questions before you guys do this by yourselves? No? Okay. Alan, can you put them into groups? Wait, oh, sure.
Yep. So it's gonna ask you to go into a breakout room. If you guys are, you guys can, if you guys have questions, you can jump out of the breakout room, and one of the advisors will be here in the main room, and we can add you back in after we answer your question. So you'll know who your partner is once you get into the breakout room.
Oh, wait, Alan, before you do that, can I explain to them something really quickly?
Yes.
If you guys look at Google Classroom, you guys can earn a total of, wait, I forgot how many points you can earn for this. 3, 4, 6, 9, 10. Okay, you can earn 13 points for this position paper team activity. And if you guys look at the Google Classroom, it's posted. Rubric for students is the rubric that we'll be grading you guys on. And position paper rubric is the rubric that you guys are going to reference back and forth when you guys look at position papers. And we're going to grade you on the number of position papers you place in the right order. So if you look at the Google Classroom, there are 3 position papers: position paper number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. No, number 1, number 2, number 3. You have to read all of those position paper. You have to dissect it, each one of them, and then you have to compile the points. And the one with the most points is the best, second, and third in that order. So, and then you present your dissection to your class. So you're gonna do a presentation, okay? And your presentation should be 3 minutes to 6 minutes long. Creative, okay. Okay, thank you guys. Don't forget Saturday, same time. And don't forget your homework. If you have any questions, then always contact us. And we'll send you guys the points you've earned today. It was only 2 RQs, so yeah.
Oh, before you guys leave, if you guys have questions and you guys are going to email us to our personal accounts, and try not to email us to the SISMUN account.
Hey, thank you, Eileen. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, James.
Thank you, guys.
Nice job, everyone. Enjoy your Sunday.
Enjoy the Sunday.
Sunday.
Thank you, guys.
Go have a
Thank you,
Sunday
guys.
paradise. Sunday paradise. And Nancy, hashtag #cha.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
See, you know, like every time in Miss John's class, she always gets caught off. Like,
Thank you, Miss Claudia.
Thanks, Miss Claudia.
thank you, Miss Claudia.
Thank you. Okay, I'm leaving now.
Goodbye.
Wait, I have a question. It's like I cannot tell, like for the past international actions, I cannot tell it is a, I don't know, it's a UN official report or not.
If it's UN what or not?
Yeah, I don't know. Cause like I cannot tell they do mention the official UN reports or not. I don't know. It is.
So it will say explicitly. It will say that this UN report, blah 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 blah. was important in this committee. They'll specifically say UN report, or they might use a name. So UN document blah blah blah. Try searching that up, and if that is categorized as UN report, then you check it off. Do you get? So if you have any questions on like a certain UN document, and if you're wondering if this is a UN resolution or if this is a UN report or a program, then just email me, and then I will teach you like how to differentiate. Okay.
Okay, thank you.